A man stood at a crossroads. Two roads stretched before him. One went left, one went right. He wanted to choose the correct path, so he stopped and thought, what if the left road was wrong? What if the right road was better? What if he made a mistake? What if he regretted his choice? So he waited. One day passed, then another, then another. The roads remained. The man remained. Years later, the roads were still there. And so was he. Think about that. Many people spend their lives at crossroads, not because they lack options, because they cannot decide. They keep thinking, keep analyzing, keep planning, keep imagining every possible outcome. Meanwhile, life keeps moving. Now imagine a river. The river never stops to ask if it is flowing in the perfect direction. It moves. When a rock appears, it moves around it. When a tree falls, it finds another way. When the path changes, the river changes too. That is why the river eventually reaches the sea. Movement creates progress, not perfect planning. Now imagine a young woman who wants to learn English. She spends hours researching the best method, the best app, the best book, the best teacher, the best schedule. Every week she discovers a new system. Every month she changes her plan. Every year she prepares to begin. But she never truly begins. Meanwhile, another person opens a simple book, learns 10 words, makes mistakes, learns 10 more. A year later, one person has knowledge about learning English. The other person can actually speak it. Think about that. Planning feels productive. Sometimes it even feels like progress. But planning and progress are not the same thing. Now imagine a man who wants to get stronger. He watches exercise videos, reads articles, studies routines, compares programs, researches equipment, learns everything about fitness, except one thing. He never exercises. The knowledge grows. The muscles do not. Why? Because information is not action, and action is what creates change. Think about a map. A map is useful. A map can help you. A map can guide you. But imagine spending your entire life studying a map. You learn every road, every mountain, every river, every city, yet you never leave your chair. Would you ever reach your destination? Of course not. At some point, the map must be folded, and the journey must begin. Life often works exactly that way. Many people are experts at preparing, experts at planning, experts at imagining, but beginners at acting. Now imagine a sailor preparing for a voyage. He checks the weather, checks the boat, checks the supplies, checks everything again. Preparation is important, but imagine he never leaves the harbor. Every day he finds a new reason to stay. The wind is not perfect. The sky is not perfect. The timing is not perfect. The conditions are not perfect. Years pass. The boat remains tied to the dock. Safe, protected, motionless. Think about that. The safest boat in the world is the one that never leaves the harbor. But that boat never discovers anything, never grows, never travels. never lives the life it was built for. And perhaps the same is true for people. Now imagine two friends. Both want to start a business. The first friend spends years planning. Business plans, market research, future projections, perfect strategies. The second friend starts small, very small. The first week is messy. The first month is messy. Mistakes happen. Problems appear. Lessons arrive. 5 years later, the difference is enormous. One person has experience. The other person has plans. Think about that. Many people believe clarity comes before action. But life often teaches the opposite lesson. Action creates clarity. Now imagine driving through thick fog. You cannot see 10 miles ahead. You cannot even see 1 mile ahead. But your headlights reveal the next few feet. And that is enough. You move forward. Then the next few feet appear. Then the next. Then the next. Eventually, you reach your destination. Life rarely shows the entire road. Life usually shows the next step. The people who move forward understand this. The people who stay stuck often do not. They keep demanding complete certainty, complete confidence, complete guarantees. Life offers none of those things. Now imagine a child building a sandcastle. The child does not spend 3 hours deciding where to place the first handful of sand. The child begins, adjusts, learns, changes, builds. Adults often do the opposite. They spend so much time trying to avoid mistakes that they avoid progress. Now think about your own life. How many decisions are you delaying? How many dreams are waiting? How many goals are sitting on a shelf while you search for the perfect plan? Think about that carefully, because there is a hidden danger in overthinking, a danger most people never notice. Overthinking feels like movement, but often it is simply standing still. And that leads us to an important question. Why does thinking feel so much safer than action? Because thinking carries no risk. At least that is what it seems. When you think about starting a business, nothing can go wrong. When you think about learning a language, nobody can correct you. When you think about writing a book, nobody can criticize it. Inside your mind, everything is safe. Everything is perfect. Everything remains possible. But the moment you act, reality enters the picture. Mistakes become possible. Failure becomes possible. Embarrassment becomes possible. And that is exactly why so many people stay in their heads. Think about that. Overthinking is often fear wearing a disguise. It looks intelligent. It sounds responsible. It feels productive. But many times, it is simply fear asking for more time. Now imagine a man standing at the edge of a swimming pool. He wants to learn how to swim. But before getting in, he wants to know everything. How deep is the water? What if he sinks? What if he struggles? What if he looks foolish? So he studies and studies and studies. Meanwhile, another person steps into the water. The second person is not more confident, not more talented, not more prepared. The difference is simple. One person accepts uncertainty. The other waits for uncertainty to disappear. Think about that. Uncertainty rarely disappears first. Action comes first. Now imagine a farmer standing in an empty field. Spring has arrived. The soil is ready. The season has begun. The farmer holds a bag of seeds. But instead of planting them, he starts worrying. What if it rains too much? What if it rains too little? What if the harvest is small? What if something goes wrong? Days pass. Weeks pass. The field remains empty. Across the road, another farmer plants his seeds. He knows some things may go wrong, but he also knows something important. No harvest comes from an empty field. Life often follows the same rule. No dream grows from inaction. No goal grows from hesitation. No future grows from endless thinking. At some point, the seed must enter the ground. Now imagine a library unlike any other. The library of perfect plans. Inside are millions of notebooks. Every notebook contains a brilliant idea. Perfect schedules. Perfect goals. Perfect strategies. Perfect plans. The shelves stretch as far as the eye can see. But something is missing. Results. Nothing inside the library was ever used. Nothing was ever tested. Nothing was ever lived. Think about that. A good plan used imperfectly is often better than a perfect plan never used. Now imagine two hikers preparing to climb a mountain. The first hiker studies every detail. The weather, the terrain, the route, the equipment, then studies it all again. The second hiker prepares too, but eventually he starts walking. Years later, one hiker has knowledge. The other has stories, experience, memories, growth. The mountain revealed itself only to the person who climbed it. Life works exactly the same way. You discover the road by walking it, not by staring at it. Now imagine driving a car at night. The headlights do not show the entire journey. They show only a small section of road. Yet somehow people reach their destination. Why? Because they trust the next few feet, then the next few feet, then the next. Overthinkers often want the entire road illuminated. They want certainty all the way to the destination. But life rarely provides that. Life usually says, take one step, then another, and only then does the road reveal itself. Think about your own life. How many times have you said, I just need to think about it a little more? A few hours? A few days? A few months? A few years? Sometimes more thinking helps. But sometimes more thinking becomes an escape from action, an escape from uncertainty, an escape from responsibility. Now imagine a young artist standing before a blank canvas. The artist wants the painting to be beautiful, perfect, meaningful. So nothing is painted. The blank canvas remains perfect, but it also remains empty. Years later, the canvas is still perfect and still empty. Think about that. Perfection often produces emptiness. Action produces growth. Now imagine a child learning to draw. The lines are crooked. The proportions are wrong. The colors do not match. But the child keeps drawing. 100 drawings later, improvement appears. 1,000 drawings later, skill appears. The child became better through action, not through endless preparation. This is true in almost every area of life. Writers become writers by writing. Speakers become speakers by speaking. Athletes become athletes by training. Learners become skilled by practicing. The path is surprisingly simple. Not easy, but simple. And that leads us to another important truth. The people who accomplish the most are often not the smartest planners. They are the people willing to take the first imperfect step. Think about that. The world is full of intelligent people, talented people, creative people, people with amazing ideas. Yet many of those ideas never become reality. Not because the ideas were bad, because the ideas stayed inside someone's head. Now imagine a gardener holding a seed. The gardener studies it, measures it, examines it, researches it, learns everything about it. Months pass. The seed remains in his hand. Across the street, another gardener plants a similar seed. The first gardener gains knowledge. The second gardener gains a garden. Think about that. Knowledge matters, but applied knowledge changes lives. Now imagine a man standing beside a bicycle. He wants to learn how to ride. So he reads books about balance, studies videos, learns the science behind motion, memorizes every technique. Months later, he still cannot ride. Why? Because bicycles are learned through movement, not theory. Life contains many things like that. Confidence is one of them. Courage is one of them. Experience is one of them. You cannot think your way into them. You must act your way into them. Now imagine a young woman standing at the edge of a stage. She wants to become a speaker, but she keeps waiting. Waiting until she feels ready. Waiting until she feels confident. Waiting until she feels qualified. Years pass. The stage remains empty. Then imagine another woman. She is nervous too, afraid too, uncertain too. But she steps onto the stage anyway. The first speech is awkward. The second speech is better. The 10th speech is stronger. The 100th speech changes lives. The confidence came later. The action came first. Think about that. Many people believe action follows confidence. Often confidence follows action. Now imagine a road through a forest. At the beginning, there is no visible path. Only trees. Only uncertainty. Only questions. Someone must take the first step. Then another. Then another. Eventually a trail appears. The trail was not discovered. The trail was created. Life often works exactly that way. Many paths become clear only after we start walking. Now imagine two students graduating from school. Both have dreams. Both have fears. Both want a better future. The first student spends years trying to make the perfect decision. Which career? Which city? Which opportunity? Which path? The second student chooses a direction and starts moving. Not perfectly, not flawlessly, just consistently. 10 years later, the difference becomes obvious. One person has gathered information. The other has gathered experience. And experience is often the better teacher. Now imagine an old watchmaker sitting in his workshop. A young man walks in. The young man looks frustrated. "I don't know what to do," he says. "I keep thinking." The watchmaker nods, then points to a clock on the wall. Tick, Tick, tick. The clock keeps moving. The young man watches silently. The watchmaker smiles, then says, "The clock never waits until it is certain. It simply moves." The young man looks confused. The watchmaker continues, "1 second at a time. Think about that. The clock does not need to see the entire day. It only needs to move through the current second." Life is often the same. You do not need the perfect plan. You do not need all the answers. You do not need complete certainty. You need the next step. Now imagine a stone lying at the top of a hill. At first, it does not move. Then someone gives it a small push. The movement is tiny, almost invisible. But slowly the stone gathers momentum. Soon it is rolling faster, then faster, then faster still. The hardest part was never the rolling. The hardest part was the first push. Many dreams work exactly like that. Many goals work exactly like that. Many lives work exactly like that. The beginning feels difficult. The middle feels easier. The momentum comes later, but only if the first step happens. Now think about your own life. What have you been thinking about for too long? A project? A conversation? A skill? A dream? How much more information do you really need? How much more planning do you really need? How much more waiting do you really need? Think about that honestly. Because sometimes the answer is none. Sometimes the next lesson is not found in another book, not found in another video, not found in another plan. Sometimes the next lesson is waiting inside action, waiting inside experience, waiting inside the first imperfect step. And that leads us to one of the biggest lies overthinking tells. A lie that keeps people stuck for years. The lie that there is a perfect decision waiting to be found. Many people believe the perfect choice exists. The perfect time. The perfect plan. The perfect path. They believe that if they think long enough, search hard enough, analyze deeply enough, they will discover the one ideal decision that guarantees the best outcome. But think about that. Life is not a puzzle with all the pieces on the table. Life is more like clay. You shape it as you go. You adapt. You learn. You change. There is no single perfect decision. There are only decisions that lead somewhere. Some lead to lessons. Some lead to growth. Some lead to opportunities. Even the wrong decisions can lead to the right places. Think about that carefully. Now imagine a traveler arriving in a city he has never visited before. He pulls out a map, studies every street, every building, every possible route. Hours pass, then an entire day. Still, he remains at the train station. Across the street, another traveler starts walking. At first, he gets lost. Then he asks for directions. Then he discovers a beautiful cafe, a hidden bookstore, a quiet park, places that never appeared on the map. By evening, one traveler has information. The other has experiences. Life often rewards movement more than certainty. Now imagine a sculptor standing before a block of marble. The sculptor does not know exactly what the final statue will look like. Only an idea exists, a rough vision, a possibility. The sculptor begins anyway. One cut, then another, then another. With each action, the vision becomes clearer. Imagine if the sculptor waited until every detail was known. Nothing would ever be created. Many people do exactly that with their lives. They wait for complete clarity. Yet clarity is usually created through action, not before it. Now imagine a young man who wants to change careers. He spends years comparing options. This job or that job. This city or that city. This path or that path. He creates lists, charts, pros and cons. Every possibility is analyzed. Meanwhile, someone else chooses a direction. Not because it is perfect, because it is good enough to begin. 5 years later, the second person has real experience, real skills, real lessons. The first person has better spreadsheets. Think about that. The future rarely belongs to the person with the best analysis. It often belongs to the person willing to move. Now imagine a river reaching a fork. Part flows left, part flows right. The river does not panic. The river does not stop. The river keeps moving. Eventually, both paths continue forward. Life often works the same way. Many decisions are not as important as we think. The important thing is movement. Because movement creates opportunities. Movement creates learning. Movement creates unexpected possibilities. Standing still creates none of them. Now imagine two artists. The first artist spends 10 years planning the perfect masterpiece. The second artist spends 10 years creating hundreds of imperfect paintings. At the end of those 10 years, who has grown more? Who has learned more? Who has discovered their true style? The answer is obvious. Perfection is often the enemy of progress. Now think about a child building with blocks. The child does not stop every 30 seconds to ask, "What if this tower isn't optimal?" The child builds. The tower falls. The child rebuilds. The child learns. Adults often make simple things complicated. Children often understand growth better than we do because they expect mistakes. They expect trial and error. They expect learning. Now imagine a man standing beside an apple tree. He studies the apples, measures them, photographs them, writes notes about them, discusses them, analyzes them, but never takes a bite. Another man simply picks an apple and eats it. One gains theories. The other gains experience. Think about how often life presents us with the same choice. More thinking or more doing. Now imagine looking back on your life 20 years from now. Will you be grateful for every hour you spent worrying? Every night you spent overanalyzing? Every week you spent delaying action? Probably not. But you may be grateful for the risks you took, the lessons you learned, the moments when you moved despite uncertainty, because those moments create stories. Those moments create growth. Those moments create change. Now imagine an old sailor speaking to a young sailor. The young sailor asks, "How do I know if I am choosing the right course?" The old sailor smiles, then points toward the ocean. "You don't." The young sailor looks surprised. The old sailor continues, "You sail. You adjust. You learn. You keep moving." Think about that. The greatest wisdom is often surprisingly simple. Life is not about finding a perfect path. Life is about walking a path and learning along the way. And that leads us to another important truth. The people who spend their lives moving forward are not the people with the fewest mistakes. They are the people who understand that mistakes are part of the journey. Think about that. Most people treat mistakes like warning signs. Signs that say, turn back, stop, this isn't working. But successful people often read those same signs differently. They see them as directions, as lessons, as information, not proof that they should quit. Now imagine a carpenter building a table. The first cut is wrong. The second cut is better. The third cut is better still. Years later, people admire the carpenter's work. The smooth edges, the perfect balance, the beautiful craftsmanship. What they do not see are the thousands of mistakes hidden behind that skill. Every expert carries a history of mistakes, a very long history. Think about that. Nobody begins as an expert. Nobody begins with mastery. Nobody begins with certainty. Every skilled person was once confused. Every confident person was once unsure. Every expert was once a beginner. Now imagine a young writer sitting before a blank page. The writer wants the first sentence to be perfect, then the second sentence, then the third. Hours pass. Nothing is written. The blank page remains flawless and completely useless. Across the room, another writer begins typing. The first sentence is weak. The second sentence is awkward. The third sentence is not much better. But by the end of the day, something exists. A draft. Something imperfect. Something real. And something real can be improved. An empty page cannot. Think about that. Action creates something to work with. Overthinking creates nothing. Now imagine a man learning how to play the piano. The first notes sound terrible. The timing is wrong. The rhythm is awkward. The mistakes are obvious. Imagine if he decided those mistakes meant he lacked talent. Imagine if he quit after the first week. The music would never appear. But he continues. One day becomes 1 month. 1 month becomes 1 year. 1 year becomes 10 years. Now people call him talented. But talent was only part of the story. Persistence was the bigger part. The willingness to sound bad before sounding good. The willingness to be a beginner. Many people want the rewards of mastery. Few people want the discomfort of learning. Now imagine a road under construction. At first it looks messy. Dust everywhere. Machines everywhere. Noise everywhere. To an outsider, it looks unfinished. Because it is unfinished. But unfinished does not mean broken. Unfinished means progress is happening. Think about your own life. Perhaps some parts of your life feel unfinished. Perhaps some goals feel far away. Perhaps some dreams still look messy. That does not mean they are failing. It may simply mean they are under construction. Now imagine a boy planting an acorn. The next morning he runs outside. Nothing. The next week. Nothing. The next month. Still nothing. If he judged the tree too early, he would believe the seed had failed. But growth often happens underground first. Invisible. Quiet. Patient. Many important things in life grow the same way. Skills, confidence, knowledge, character. The results are not always visible immediately. That is why overthinkers often struggle. They want certainty before action and results before patience. Life rarely works like that. Now imagine two mountain climbers. The first climber stops every few minutes, checking the map, checking the weather, checking every possibility. The second climber checks too, but eventually keeps climbing, hour after hour, step after step. By sunset, one climber knows more about the mountain. The other climber is standing on it. Think about that. Knowledge is valuable, but applied knowledge changes lives. Now imagine an old gardener speaking to his grandson. The grandson asks, "How do I know if a seed will grow?" The gardener smiles, then says, "You don't." The boy looks confused. The gardener continues, "You plant it. You water it. You care for it. Then you find out." There is wisdom in that. Many answers in life arrive after action, not before. Many lessons arrive after experience, not before. Many opportunities appear after movement, not before. Now think about the crossroads from the beginning of our story. The man stood there for years, trying to choose the perfect road. But imagine something surprising. What if both roads could have led somewhere meaningful? What if both roads contained lessons? What if both roads contained growth? What if the real mistake was never choosing at all? Think about that carefully, because many people spend so much time trying to avoid the wrong path that they never walk any path at all. And that brings us to one final lesson about overthinking. Perhaps the most important lesson of all. The lesson that separates people who dream about life from people who actually live it. Imagine two people sitting in the same room. Both have dreams. Both have goals. Both want more from life. The first person spends years imagining. The second person spends years doing. At first, they do not look very different. Both are learning. Both are thinking. Both are planning. But time has a way of revealing the difference. 1 year passes, then 5, then 10. Slowly, two very different lives begin to appear. The first person has many ideas. The second person has many experiences. The first person has theories. The second person has stories. The first person knows what might work. The second person knows what actually works. Think about that. Life rewards action in ways that thinking never can. Not because thinking is useless, because thinking was never meant to replace action. Thinking is a tool. Action is the builder. Now imagine a ship being built in a shipyard. The design matters. The plans matter. The calculations matter. But eventually, the ship must touch the water. That is the moment when everything becomes real. The waves become real. The wind becomes real. The journey becomes real. Many people spend their entire lives improving the blueprint. Very few launch the ship. Now imagine an old photographer looking through thousands of pictures. Photographs from decades of life. Some pictures are beautiful. Some are blurry. Some are imperfect. Some capture mistakes, unexpected moments, wrong turns, failed plans. Yet those become some of his favorite photographs. Why? Because they are real. They happened. They became part of a life fully lived. The photographer smiles, not because everything went according to plan, because life happened. Think about that. A messy life filled with action often becomes a meaningful life. A perfect life that exists only in your imagination remains imaginary. Now imagine a musician standing before an audience. The musician could have stayed home, could have waited another year, could have waited for more confidence, more preparation, more certainty. Instead, the musician stepped onto the stage. Mistakes happened. Nervousness happened. Growth happened. The audience applauds. Not because the performance was perfect, because it was real. Now imagine an elderly man sitting on a bench near a quiet lake. The sun is setting. The day is ending. He watches the water and thinks about his life, the chances he took, the places he visited, the people he met, the things he tried. Not all of them worked. Some failed completely. Some ended badly. Some taught painful lessons. Yet he smiles, because he knows something many people never learn. The value of a life is not measured by perfect decisions. It is measured by lived experiences. Now imagine another man sitting on a different bench. He spent his life waiting, waiting for certainty, waiting for confidence, waiting for the perfect moment. As he looks back, he notices something painful. The perfect moment never arrived. The perfect plan never appeared. The perfect certainty never came. And now there is no more time to wait. Think about that. The greatest danger of overthinking is not making mistakes. The greatest danger is missing life itself. Missing opportunities. Missing growth. Missing experiences. Missing the chance to discover who you could become. Now imagine standing once more at the crossroads from the beginning of our story. The two roads are still there. The choice is still there. The uncertainty is still there. But now you understand something different. The goal is not finding the perfect road. The goal is moving forward. Because every road teaches something. Every journey reveals something. Every step creates something. And standing still creates nothing. Now think about your own life. What decision have you been postponing? What dream have you been analyzing? What goal have you been preparing for endlessly? What step have you been avoiding? Perhaps you already know. Perhaps the answer has been clear for a long time. Perhaps what you need is not another plan, not another book, not another video, not another month of thinking. Perhaps what you need is a beginning, a small beginning, an imperfect beginning, a courageous beginning, because beginnings change lives. One conversation, one application, one lesson, one phone call, one page, one workout, one decision. Small actions become large futures. Now imagine tomorrow morning. You wake up. Nothing magical has changed. The uncertainty remains. The fear remains. The questions remain. But something else remains too. Your ability to act. Your ability to choose. Your ability to take the next step. And that is enough. More than enough. Because the people who build meaningful lives do not wait for perfect certainty. They move with imperfect certainty. They learn while moving. They grow while moving. They discover the path while walking it. And perhaps that is the ultimate lesson. You do not need a perfect plan. You need a first step. You do not need complete certainty. You need enough courage to begin. The road appears when you start walking. So stop overthinking. Stop waiting. Stop standing at the crossroads. Choose a direction. Take a step. Then another. Then another. Your future will not be built by the thoughts you keep in your head. It will be built by the actions you take today. And that first action may be closer than you think. See you in the next story.